Mrs. Dev, Mr. Siddiqui for the relics, and Mr. Parsadi and fellow delegates. It's, it's really a privilege and an honor to be here. I see many friends. I think I see Ramesh there, I see Aravamudan. So I see many friends and many people whom I'm familiar with. And firstly, I want to thank Maruti Suzuki and XISS for doing this kind of a service. One, to honor one of our own in the HR fraternity, and more, really not just talk about what he might have accomplished, but really drive the legacy. So therefore, really thank you for all the work that your company as well as XISS and the NHRD fraternity are doing. So we're really indebted to what you're doing to make that life worth. It's always a challenge. I'm glad that you talked about ER challenges in 2020. Normally people ask you to talk about 2030 or something like that. That's much easier, you can say anything you want and get away with it. Okay, so it's, 2020 is just 3.5 years away, and many of us will still be around to remember, oh, that guy said that, and it didn't happen. Okay. So they always say that, there's one famous saying attributed to Bill Gates, says that we overestimate the changes that will happen in the next 2 years and grossly underestimate the changes that will happen in the next 10 years. And that's really true. So therefore, I'm going to really take your liberty in extending this horizon a little bit. The good thing is, all challenges are known to every one of you. And as I was remarking with some of you, we just don't know what to do about it. Okay? That's always the challenge. The challenge is not really what challenges we will face, but how will we face it and what will we do very differently from that. So I'm going to give some perspectives, and some of which will be familiar, and I hope that there would be a few takeaways. And I'm also happy to see that either you've just cornered them or given them incentives. You got students to come for an employee relations. How did you do that? Okay, so is it kind of a fiat I saw that the manager, did you all come here because you liked the subject or because you were forced to come? You can be frank, because you're millennials and you can tell what you, so I'm really happy to see, because this is the first time I'm seeing an employee relations program. Normally, the people like us, beyond 50, we attended because that's the only thing that we know, but I've never seen so many students coming. So that's really a huge connect that this memorial lecture is doing, and I'm really happy about that. I think to get to see so many of you here, youngsters, and so I think we all know all that is impacting us. You know about the globalization. I think there are a few things, just 3 major topics that I'm going to talk about. And hopefully I'll say what is it that as HR fraternity that we can do. Okay, you all know about demographics, correct? I mean, I think demographic shift, I think India is in the kind of a cusp. I think half of the demographic dividend, we have already utilized it. We have just less than 20 years before we start hitting the kind of a plateau on the demographic dividend. So we have 20 more years. So the 20 more years is a fairly long period, in a period where I think your GDP can, I guess, if you do at 8%, you can more than 5 times in this particular period. Indian GDP can go from 1,400 per capita to about 7,000. So which is really a dramatic shift, because many things will happen. Even when we moved from 600 or 700 to 1,400, we saw dramatic changes in the profile. So from 1,400 to 7,000 can be a very big shift. This demographic dividend comes with some kind of challenges that always comes up with. But globally, almost all economies have benefited by the demographic dividend, despite the challenges that they come. I think China was in the sweet spot between probably 1980 to 2014, and I think 2014 is when they started, that's the end of the period. So you really have a 30 or 40 year period where you can really do a lot with the society. So we know that the statistics, that large number of people are coming in, Many of them are minimally skilled. Our institutions' capability to train, educate, skill them, while it has improved 10 years, in the last 10 years, there is still a huge amount of opportunity for to do that. So for me, I think one of the big challenges in the employee relations is over the last 15 years, if you really study, and I think many of us are from the manufacturing industries, we really have not pushed up the productivity at all. I think this is only a HR group, so we don't have too many CEOs, I hope. I think if the CEOs really ask us the question, and what exactly is the productivity increase that you have delivered, I think we'll find that we are short. Because we've always grown by adding people, changing the mix, but really not deeply a productive country. And it's very simple. Indian total factor productivity has been growing between 3 and 4%, that's it. Compared to during a similar growth period, China was delivering 10% productivity growth. So therefore, this demographic dividend and change is actually going to come with a lot of challenges for productivity. Now, our answer to productivity, I think you already rightfully said that in your thing, is that we try to do the cost mix. We try to manage the cost mix. And what we did, you know all, I think Aramadan is looking at me. I think we really made, if you have the same employee working for you, roughly, I think we give an increase of 12 or 14%, correct? That's a minimum, including the cost of living adjustment and things like that. That means it's doubling in 5 years, quadrupling in 10 years, becoming 8 times in 15 years, in 20 years, 16 times. So if you have the same employee working for you, in today's, if you really project the past, you would be paying something like 16 times the compensation 20 years from now. And that is impossible in a situation where your productivity is not growing at that level. So therefore, we really lived in an era of slightly high inflation. We've been inflating the prices, notwithstanding Maruti resisting all the price increases, okay, from the component suppliers. So, but I think we inflated ourselves, and I think this is really, so for me, there is a huge productivity challenge, and I think the existing ways of managing cost by a very massive adjustment of our own employees, where the cost is going double, quadruple, 8, 16 times in 10, 15, 20 years, really we have put in a lot of temporary workforce. Okay, it's not bad by itself, because I don't think the term contract labor has become somewhat a negative connotation. I mean, it's not bad by itself, otherwise we would not have been able to employ a large number of people. So I think this demographic dividend is going to bring to us a huge productivity challenge, and I don't think manufacturing alone can really absorb all of these people, because we really are, even if we grow at 12 or 13% per annum with a productivity increase of 5 or 6, we'll add about 6% per annum. So it's not, we're not going to really add that much. So therefore, this is really a big challenge that we are facing. So for an individual company, I think if the CEO doesn't ask the question, what is the real productivity change that we are seeing year on year, I think that will be a question that HR and ER leaders will have to ask. Along with that, we are also seeing different models of, there is a shift in the model of the manufacturing system. In the past, when we had the old car companies or the old automotive companies like Tata's and Leyland, everything used to be manufactured in-house, correct? I think in the late 80s, the early 80s, Maruti came in. I think it ushered in a different model, which is really a huge component and vendor development model. And I think today, a result of all of that is you have a huge component cluster in Gurgaon, a massive one in Chennai, and a very large one in Pune, and then distributed it across some of the few other locations. So that ecosystem has changed. But I think another ecosystem which is developing in the employee area is that we are no longer, we still use terms like core, non-core, and something like that. I don't know I don't know whether for Maruti, core is engine or your Nexa showroom. I don't know. I think without the Nexa showroom or the engine, I don't think you can survive. So I'm kind of always confused when legal professionals and HR professionals tell me what is core, what is not core. You know, I've always resisted this attempt, and I think sometimes we let this judiciary get into all this stuff. I would only say that there is a huge supply chain. Can Maruti survive without the vendors? Can it survive without the showrooms and the mechanics who are there? So where does the Maruti's principal employment stop? Should we include all the, all those who are working in the thing, because they are also contributing to Maruti's success. So I think this whole thing is changing. So we have specialists, just like we have specialist distributors, specialist dealers, specialist body shop. I think you will see specialization coming in, and you will find in the physical space multiple specialists working. The logistics is one which is already happening. Today I don't think, so a whole lot, our contract labor, while it has some negative connotation, it is really evolving into an ecosystem. I think this ecosystem is something which we are not really, the government doesn't recognize it, the industry is shy from talking it, those people themselves are shy from talking about it because they want to stay under the radar of the government and the judiciary and things like that. But today, the largest amount of employment addition is not going to come from established companies. Okay? I don't know how many more people we will add, and I just did a number. For the next 50% turnover increase, I will add probably 7 or 8% more people into the system. So obviously, because we are also looking at productivity. So given all of that, I think we have to recognize this new ecosystem of specialists. And I think this is going to become even more when I talk about another disruption that is taking place in the whole manufacturing system. So I think we need to recognize this. We need to say that, look, it's no longer core, non-core. I don't know. I, as a company, we are very good at certain things. We do that well. For us, I'll say we know how to melt glass, make it flat, come out without defects. That's all that we know. But would we be happy about transporting it? Would we be happy about the logistics of all of that? No. Somebody else is much better at that, and they have the scale and the scope to do that. So therefore, this new ecosystem, which is really what, the global supply chain is just that, right? Apple doesn't make anything. It's a massive ecosystem. And if Indian laws have to be applied, Apple will be the principal employer for some 3 or 4 million people in China, correct? So I think it's illogical, right? I think, so what do? I mean, I think we really have, I think just like the vendor management shifted quality focus to the vendors in the early 80s, the ecosystem management is going to shift the responsibilities for safety, health, environment, training, skills. That still remains a core competency of the companies, but you will be really shifting many of these responsibilities to specialist companies. For instance, the largest employer in Tamil Nadu is not Hyundai, it's not Ashok Leyland, it's not one of the TVS companies, it's a company called UDS. Okay, UDS has the largest employment generation in the last 10 years. It's none of us. We have not created as many employment as they have created, because they are really aggregating and they are providing a livelihood for people who are minimally educated. So therefore, I see this disruption of the manufacturing ecosystem into a completely different model. So from what was your competency areas, you do that very well. But there are many things that you have to do, which is part of the supply chain, which you form it out to very talented companies, which have scale and capability in that space. And I think that is really happening today. Today, we are not using contractors who are like, we are not going and picking up some nearby village mukhya or a panchayat head and tell him, give me 50 people. That's not the way we are doing. I think that thing has changed, even though the impression in the minds of judiciary and government is just that. So therefore, I see this shift taking place. The second big shift, the third big shift is digital. I think digital is going to disrupt manufacturing more deeply than we think today. I've just come back from spending a lot of time on this subject with a lot of my colleagues. I think it's completely changing the way we are conceiving things today. And there are enough studies. Everybody thinks that digital is social media and all of that stuff. The 40% of the investment in digital will taking place in manufacturing. It will be the industry 4.0, which will really drive much of the digital activities. You're going to see sensors, you're going to see, we already see automation, but what we have seen as automation is nothing compared to what kind of automation, machine-man interface that's going to happen in the coming years. So digitalization is coming, and Industry 4.0 is reality in many parts of the world. And we know that I was recently in a windshield assembly plant. It was 36 robots dancing together and putting all the fixtures around a windshield. We have some 100 people doing that. So, and I think it was an exquisite symphony, but it was also scary. So digital is really disrupting. If we don't act in India and we still think that we can arbitrage our labor, I think that's going to be a big challenge. So therefore, this is one thing. Then there is so much of change that is taking place even in the automation. You have what is now, I think 4 or 5 years ago, Bosch put together the future of manufacturing. I think they talked about what is called collaborative robots, which is cobots. It's called cobots. The collaborative robots are something which has eliminated all the issues with robots. See, what is the problem with robots? Robots themselves are not expensive, but all the infrastructure to protect man or woman from interacting with the robot adds up huge amount of cost. Teaching a robot was an expensive programming activity. All of that has changed today. Today we have cobots which are between $20,000 to $40,000. Add another $20,000. You can work with them. You teach them like you teach your child, saying that you pick this and show that cobot that this is how you'll have to move, and the cobot starts doing that. You don't have to have expensive programming capabilities. So this is going to change the way our shop floors are going to be. And I think for a lot, so therefore, I see a traditional pyramidal employment flattening. We will have fairly few experts and a very broad range of minimally skilled people who are doing it, which is fairly good for us, because in India, for that matter, today, this is a big challenge for the West, because they have a pyramid in terms of they have a huge middle. But in India, we have a huge base, which is minimally skilled, minimally qualified, and other thing. So therefore, the digital is going to really make it easier, at least for the next 20 years. I don't know what will happen after 20 years. We'll see it in 2036 when you have your lecture. But right now, I think this is a great opportunity. And I'm also seeing another area where we've always had a challenge. 10 years ago, I started talking about skill deficit as a challenge, and we said that historically, all of us in manufacturing are used to having skills being done with the hands, and the entire training has to be hand-based, a lecture mode and things like that. It's completely changed. The millennials do not want to learn from anyone else, whether they are educated or not educated, they have the same attitude. So they learn by doing, they learn by experimenting. And today's tools that are available to do either augmented reality or virtual reality or the maintenance, it's really possible. I know, for instance, in one of our plants in Europe, we have a Google Glass kind of a device which is guiding some very ordinary migrant who has not been trained, and is doing a fairly complicated maintenance job, because at every stage is being guided by a video aided. So he's learning by doing, and you can deliver that today. So therefore, what I'm saying is, one of the, while we talk about our traditional challenges, it's traditional issues, the real challenge for the year people there, the people who are working in human resources in the plant, is really how do I digitalize learning and development? How do I make that as part of experimenting, doing, learning, improving? And I think 80 to 90% of the expertise can be obtained in a very, very short period of time. So gone are those days where you need to have 10 years or 5 years of workers to do that job. So therefore, digital is impacting learning and development even more deeply. We are familiar with MOOCs, but today MOOCs is in the Google Glass. So therefore, I think this is a big shift that is taking place. So the digital is disrupting it because today you have more flexible interfaces and robots and other things. On the other side, it's also disrupting it in terms of the learning and development where you can get anybody to learn very, very quickly. And I mean, what I'm saying is not science fiction. Today, there are few companies in India who are already practicing some of this. Okay, virtual reality, augmented reality, delivering expertise when it is needed, automating decision-making system, they are real today. It's not that we are doing rocket science in our manufacturing. If it is rocket science, I think you'll need better people than all of us, okay? So I think that's really happening. So therefore, I think the human resources focus must be somewhat different now. And I think, so apart the traditional productivity, really how do I digitalize? How do I, in a digital world, what do I do it differently? So basically you have one huge positive benefit, which is a demographic dividend. And the second one is the ecosystem which is changing. And the third one is, which is disrupting the manufacturing. Like the 30 years ago, the vendor development and all of that changed completely many things. And the third one is really digital, which is disrupting in ways which we cannot think of. For the human resources professionals, and the key thing today is digital also is making many things easier. The individuals who are coming out, the millennials, and in a few years the centennials will be coming out, they will not be the same as what we were. They're not going to listen to leadership automatically. So that's good, that's bad in some ways, but it's very good. That means they're going to take their own decision based on information that is available to them. In the past, one of the challenges that I hate to use the term management, but I'm saying one of the challenges that leadership had is that we were not able to connect with our employees. That is completely changed today. I can communicate digitally to every single individual, personalizes the message and communicate the importance of what he or she is doing and how our company is performing, what kind of challenges and opportunities that we face. I can do that. In the past, we could not do that. In the language the person understands, in the way the person understands. So I think digital is making this ability to connect significantly. And so my fear is, okay, some of the old-fashioned HR leaders may say that means we will lose the human touch. But then who are we to worry about the human touch if the whole world is doing that way? Why should we assume that we have to have this human touch when the whole world is connecting in a different way than what we are used to? And that's accept that as a reality and say that's a way digital is going to impact. Let's embrace it, because today resisting it and saying I want to have my little touch here, all that, we know how much of that is really real. I mean, whatever discussion that we have is not really, we talk more about it, but this connection is making it extremely good. The second skill that we have to develop is historically, and it's changed, it's always been competitive relationship between certain class of employees and then certain class of management, okay? I think that is completely changing to a collaborative mode. I think people are collaborating significantly more today, and the new kids who are coming in, the millennials or the centennials, are much more collaborative than we were when we were kids. We were very competitive. We were not easy to work with, but today the kids are easier to work with. So connect, collaborate. And I think the third one is, thanks to this connection and collaboration and aided by digital, we really can create new forms of engagement. The engagement that we have could be very different from what it is. And all of that will have a huge impact on change. So therefore, to just sum up what I talked about, we are in a very interesting phase. I suppose every generation thinks that it's in an interesting phase. That's really the prerogative of each generation. But we are really in a fairly unique situation. Globally, the demographic dividend is applicable to India in a big way, Middle East, and a bit of Africa. Africa is still to wake up. Middle East is in a turmoil. India is in a very unique position that the whole demographic dividend can be to our advantage. But it comes with huge challenges. We really have to look at productivity in a very conventional sense, which we have not really looked at it. We really have to look at the new disrupted manufacturing ecosystem, like we navigated the earlier disruptions. I think we need to do it very differently this time. And therefore, we have to work with government, we have to work with judiciary to get them to understand this stuff. I mean, it's extremely difficult for people. And I'll give you one example of a controversy which many of us emotionally may even agree. You have this controversy, equal work, equal pay, correct? Right? Instinctively, we will say it's a correct thing because it seems to be a very humanistic thing. But just look at it. Essentially, what you're saying is, I'm going to pay that worker for his output or for her output, period. Nothing else. Potential, skills, knowledge, loyalty, tenure has no meaning. So if, for instance, somebody mandates equal work, equal pay, what it means is that no more increments. Okay? You give me 100, the next time when you give me 105, you will get a portion of that. I don't think that's what people are talking about, right? So what happens is we have a lot of muddled explanations in judiciary, muddled explanations in the government, lack of economic rationale in many of this, lack of social sciences, all of that are confusing. So therefore, we need to really go out there and explain. Okay, the third one is the digital. The digital is deeply disruptive. Disruptive is a positive thing. We can take advantage of it. I think there are huge possibilities. Automation is one thing, but really learning and development in a completely new way. But more than anything else, digital will enable us to connect, collaborate with our employees deeply, much more than what we are doing today, in a much more personalized way than what we would be doing. And I can tell you that I just want to ask some of those people who are slightly older. I think my relationship with my son is much better thanks to digital. Okay, I don't think I had a very comfortable relationship with my father. Once in 6 months, we used to meet and we used to sit opposite each other, not knowing what to talk to him. He didn't know what to talk to me, and I didn't know. But just look at the number of engagement that I'm having with my son or my daughter-in-law, whatever it is. The amount of engagement is because we are connected in multiple ways. Just imagine the same thing will happen between you and your employees. Whatever way, whatever be the employees, whether they are less educated or whether they are extremely educated, whatever be it, that is going to make it. So connect, collaborate, and create new ways of doing it, and that will really change the society. And thank you for this opportunity from both XISS and Maruti Suzuki. And I do hope that you'll continue this spirit. And I do really wish the trust every bit of its success in its objectives. And thank you once again.